Hi, I'm Rick Conlow. I'm glad you're here. Say, did you hear about that study at the Aqua Marina in Florida? They study ocean life. They captured a barracuda and a Spanish mackerel, put them in the same tank of water, put a glass plate in between them. Barracuda likes to eat mackerel, and it sees the mackerel over there, goes after it, boom, hits the glass plate. Goes after it, hits the glass plate. Gets agitated, boom, 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 boom. And it stops, swims away. Goes after it, stops, swims away. Goes after it, stops, swims away. Scientists are observing this phenomena, so they take the glass plate out. Nothing there. Barracuda's still hungry. Mackerel swimming way over here. Barracuda goes after it, stops, swims away. Goes after it, stops, swims away. Why did it stop? Well, it was conditioned, wasn't it? Hit its head too many times, and it learned that it could only go so far. And I think a lot of managers are like that. They believe they can only go so far with their coaching and accomplish so much. And so a lot of times they don't do it. and they don't keep learning about ways to do it. Well, I hope today, in this video, that you will learn how to coach like a pro to accelerate your success as well as your team's success. Because if your team succeeds, you succeed as a leader, correct? So we're going to dig into that. So what's our agenda here? We're going to talk about 7 key qualities of coach. We'll go over that. We'll talk about 5 behaviors of a successful coach. 2 kinds of major types of coaching. There isn't just one. And then we'll look at some critical questions to help you in the coaching process. 7 different ones that will make a huge difference. Now, they're not the only ones, but they're 7 key ones. That sound good? Now, before I get into that, let's talk about this. What's the payoff for you in coaching? If you invest the time and effort to learn and to spend that time with your team and engage them, because it takes hard work. It isn't easy, but the payoff is great. What does it do? Well, because you're investing time, and it's about the relationships first before the results, you'll build a trusting relationship with your time. They know they can count on you. They can talk to you. And then second, you'll inspire them. They'll feel better. They'll begin learning. You'll see that when we dig into it. And it starts making a difference for them and their results and their efforts, which will help them do even more because they're learning and growing and developing. And then what this does is the bottom line results become better. Okay, I'll show you some results we've achieved later on. So that sounds good, doesn't it? So now look at this picture of all these athletes. What do they have in common? Some people say Olympics. Others say they're really good at what they do. Certainly. But it's even more than that. They all have a coach. You don't get to be the best of the best like Olympic athletes unless you have somebody help you get to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And that's what they did. They're like 0.1% of anybody who's ever participated in their events. And they worked hard enough to get there with their coach's guidance and direction to be able to make that happen. They always had the talent. The coach helped bring out the best in them. And that's what we're talking about here. So does coaching work? Can you get the results? Well, here you'll see that there are 2 different studies. First one, personnel associations find on average managers implement good coaching, they can get 88% impact. When I first read that study a number of years ago, I applied that to one of my clients. They wanted to improve sales to existing customers. And so we went through a process of coaching their team management, planning with them, training them, put that in place. First year we got 75%. They couldn't believe it. They thought they'd get 15%. We got 75%. The next year we did 122%. So coaching works. It can pay off in bottom line results when you put in the effort. When you roll up your sleeves, you invest in your team. And then Metrics Global Study found a 529% improvement. I mean, that's crazy. That's almost unbelievable. But what they were talking about here is ongoing, sustained efforts. You just don't do it once or a few months or a few people to try to get the results. You work with the whole team. Yes, the low performers. Yes, the high performers. Because the low performers will get better. The high performers will get better. That's where you get that kind of impact. And then you do it this month, next month, the month after that, or this year, next year, the year after that. And then you get that kind of huge impact in terms of what you do. I had another client that had a new product, wanted to implement it, but their competitors had the same product. The competitors kind of owned the business. We worked with them in multiple cities across the U.S. from LA to Baltimore, and we implemented the process, and all the different cities got 48%, 52, 54% improvement from what they had done the prior couple years when they were trying to do it on their own. Why? Because they weren't experts at coaching. We are. And so we help them learn how to do that in a sustainable process to get improvements. During the pandemic, I had some retail organizations that I worked with. And it was tough on retail because people can't go in. This organization that I worked with, we helped them improve their NPS and ENPS. That's employee engagement and customer engagement scores. Normally, most organizations come in at 15 to 20 on the ENPS or NPS scores. Our client was 60 to 80% in their number of different locations, and their same-store sales, based on prior years, doubled and tripled that and beat the competition. So you can get significant improvement. Had another client that was working against the largest company in the world, if you know who that is. And they weren't that big. They were only 12 billion in size, although that's a good sized company. They needed to improve their customer service because this giant of a business, their competitor, was building locations all around them. And so we helped them improve their customer experience. So really what it was is an employee development program, leadership development program, an adjustment in some processes, and we identified all that into planning and then put it into place. They improved 19 points on their customer experience scores, moved from the bottom third to the top third. That's a huge, huge jump. And they did that within 2 years. And that, of course, added 2 to 3% to their same-store sales beyond what the market was doing. And so they were beating the market and beating the competition, and they beat this giant of a business they had to compete against. So let me assure you, the results are there. Now, why do managers fail at coaching? First, they lack the know-how. Yes, they've read about it. Maybe they attended a course or two, but it's more than that. You got to move from a novice to an expert. And what I'm going to outline are the things you need to know and tools and techniques to help you do that. So most people stop learning and they don't go enough further. It's got to be all the time. They're always learning. Every session, read a book, read a video, always do that. That'll help you be effective. Then they don't take the time. Most managers, you know when they coach? They coach when someone's got a performance problem, and check me if I'm wrong on that. May have happened to you. You may have done that with other people. Or they only coach the low performers because they don't want to take the time. And so it's kind of in passing. Hey, come on in. You got a problem? Let's talk about it. That's not coaching. That's browbeating usually. A lot of managers start and they don't get the results they think they should get, so they fail. Why? Because maybe there's some problem employees. Maybe they don't have upper management support. You know, I've worked with good bosses and bad bosses. Good bosses give you the support. You get it done. You can accelerate faster. Bad bosses get in the way, quite frankly. But doesn't mean you can't do it because they're not there every time. If you stick with it, you'll start getting the results. And what does a bad boss do? They leave you alone because you're getting the job done. And then the other reason managers fail is they have a character defect. They, quite frankly, to be honest, they don't care. They're out for their success. They're not into the team success. And so they beat people up instead of build them up. We want to minimize, all of that. We don't want that to happen. So let's talk about the qualities you need to have. Be a good coach where you succeed at coaching. Have integrity. That's honesty, ethics, and character. Not enough of that. And we see it in the media all the time, a lack of integrity and ethics with executives and politicians. And then caring. You got to believe in people. It's kind of a servant leadership approach. In other words, help the team succeed. As I said, bring out the best in people. Make it a win-win. They win, you win. Help them win first or you don't get your win. Because if you've got constant turnover, because you have to fire people all the time, it's not always the people's fault. There are some bad performers, you got to let them go if they don't respond to the support you give them. But if you got a revolving door, you're the problem as a manager. So you got to care to help people win. You really want them to achieve their goals, which will help them achieve the company goals. Then you got to have empathy. You got to be a good listener. You'll see that when I talk about asking questions. And remember the first rule of leadership. And here it is. It's not about you. It's about the team. And then asking questions. Asking questions to gain understanding. Asking questions to teach. Those are critical elements. A lot of times these questions start with what? You'll see I'll give you some examples a little bit later on. And then problem solving. So we work the problem together. You can just give the answers. And as a manager, you probably learn what an employee might do on a problem A, B, or C. However, you need to help the employee learn to solve the problem. So we got to work together collaboratively, and then discipline. What that means is you make a commitment to do ongoing coaching sessions, to ongoing learning and development for yourself, maybe even get yourself a coach. And then positivity. Got to do this upbeat. We got to give people hope that they can do better, that they can win, that they can succeed, that they have the potential. And that's what we're doing. We're mining the potential they already have to bring out the best in them for them to succeed as a high performer. Wow! Wouldn't you like a coach like this? If they engaged you through these kinds of characteristics? Absolutely. Absolutely. Then there are two major kinds of coaching. One is called informal coaching, and the other is formal coaching. Now, you may have never heard of this before, but here's why I bring it up. As a manager, we should always be coaching. So informally, here's what it means. You interact with your employees all day long. It could be by phone, could be in person, could be planned or unplanned. Like you walking down the hall and the employee comes by and there they are and you talk for a few minutes. Coaching opportunity. Now you don't have 30 minutes, but you do have a minute or two, and that can be a good moment to handle something that needs to be handled. It could be a phone call, could be an email, could be a virtual meeting. Could be a Zoom, could be, a Teams contact that you have with them. All of those are times to do that. I went remote in my business in 1996. So I learned remote working a long time. In the beginning, we did video conferencing or phone conferencing, and then we transitioned to all the tools that we have today. And it doesn't matter if you're in person or not in person, these things work. So informal are short moments where you interact with somebody, and then what you try to do is follow up on an issue. Say, how you doing on that goal that we talked about the other day? Or give them a recognition. Hey, I got some feedback from customer, and they said you did this. Great job. Or you say, hey, remember, get that report to me. I need that tomorrow morning. So you just take a few moments of time to do that. Instead of doing that like you go up to somebody, hey, doughhead, don't forget to get that done. You forgot last time. Or you go up to them and say, hey, you screwed up another customer. I just got a complaint. No. If you got more in-depth problems to talk to them, you ask them to come to your office, you sit down and deal with it. That's informal coaching. Short, planned or unplanned, minutes of time where you try to build your team up with short reminders, reinforcements, follow-ups, ideas in the midst of maybe some talk about other things. And then there's the formal coaching. Formal coaching is where you sit down with the employee on a planned meeting. You schedule it weekly to monthly. And it usually takes 15 to 45 minutes depending on the organization. Usually the more customers that an employee has, probably the longer the session would take. I found most of the time 30 minutes will get most of it done. 15 to 30 minutes usually. If you got more in-depth, higher level in terms of people you're working with, in terms of maybe you're managing executives or department managers or VPs or directors, it might take a little bit longer. That's why we put 45 minutes. And then you go through a process. And I'll talk about the process a little bit later. And you discuss what's going on and have a conversation. Okay? And it's a dialogue, not a monologue. You want to get them involved in thinking, because your key goal here is to teach them to be self-directed by the process you use to help them. So our goal here is to help the employees succeed in whatever their career aspirations are. It's also to help them reach their goals. It's also you want them to reach the company goals. So it's focus on people first and then profit next, or business results next. Both are important. You tie them together, but you start with the person. You start with the team. Does that make sense? See what I'm talking about? You see how this can be different than how other people do it? So there are 7 critical questions. I'm going to quickly go over these, and then I'm going to give you the process to coaching, how to back this up. Because coaching isn't just you do 20 questions and just ask a bunch of questions and get somebody flustered. There's an organization to it, but there's some better questions to ask than others, and that's what I've outlined here. How are you doing? So when you start a coaching session, you just want to ask an open-ended question like that to get them talking, to see what they have to say. Okay? And then some point in time you transition into the particular game plan you have with that person. So go over with me now the key goals you're working on. And then ask them, okay, on those goals, what's working? What isn't working is the next one. So you want to find out the good stuff that's happening and even the problems that are coming up. And if there are some problems or even some of the good things, you say, now what do you think you can do differently or better with that goal? Say the goal is on sales and they're about 75% of the goal. Say, okay, so you're making progress from where you were last time. What are your thoughts now on your next steps? What can you do differently? What can you do better? Okay? And then there's another question you ask is, what do you need more of or less of from me? So you're asking for some feedback and what you can do to help this employee be even more, even better at what they're doing. And then the last one is then what are the next steps after this session? That's your action plan moving forward. You may adjust what you already have, you may build a new one, or you keep the current one, just continue to work on it. Now there are other questions you can ask, but you ask these kind in the midst of a process of a coaching session. So what does it look like, a coaching session? It's a process. It begins with building a relationships. You got to clarify a goal, a number of goals, usually 3 to 5. You don't want to have 75, too many. I had one manager I was working with and they had like 50 different goals through managing by objectives. That's ridiculous. What you got to do is pare it down to the priorities, and usually it's 3 to 5. That's where you start. And so once you have that goal or plan, then you ask them questions. So someone comes into your coaching sessions, you shake hands, say hello, maybe get a glass of water, a pop or something, say let's get comfortable, how's it going? Maybe you talk about a meeting you had for just a few minutes, or they tell you about their soccer team that they're coaching on, and then you say, well, how about the business? How's that going? And they say, well, let me tell you. And then you get into it, and you say, okay. Give me more. Okay, can you give me an example? And then you start using those questions. So what's working? What isn't working? See what I'm talking about here? So it's a collaborative process, teaching them to learn on their own, teaching them to think on their own, teaching them to solve the problems. Eventually, you do this long enough, and what happens, and I've found this in my career time and time again, you do this process consistently over a period of months, and usually it only takes a few months to get into a rhythm of this thing. And then what happens is they're coming in, they already got answers to everything. They've already thought it all through. They just may want some confirmation from you. And then near the end of the process, let's just summarize what we talked about today. Go ahead and do that. What are the key goals and steps you're going to take? And let them tell you instead of you telling them. Don't jump in. See, a manager's got to bite their tongue so they don't do all the talking. The employees should do 80% of the talking. The manager's doing 20% of guiding the process and asking the questions. Does it mean you never give advice? No. Okay, when you get down to the problem-solving process and they've come up with a couple items, can you say, is there anything else? And then you add your advice or your thoughts. Say, what about this? Or what's I've done in the past this. What do you think about that? Have you ever tried this? So you give them a few ideas about what they can do to be better. So you do get it in there. And if they don't come up with what you want, you just add it. Say, you know what? Here's something I'd like you to try. And then you tell them that. And then you review that. And then you set a follow-up date. Then you come back again, weekly to monthly. And I say this, if you're new at it, do it weekly. And then over time, as the process gets moved on, I've had 10 direct reports. And the last time I had 10 direct reports, they were on a monthly process. But they all started, on a more consistent basis of weekly to every other week, depending on the situation. See what I'm talking about here? This takes time. This takes effort. But, people start learning and moving faster because you're giving them the guidance and the benefit of your expertise in doing that. Now, when you schedule these things, you got to make sure you keep that schedule. Now, you know what? Sometimes things come up. The boss, the president of the company wants to talk to you and it conflicts with the meeting. You get to the employee, say, hey, I apologize. So-and-so wants to talk to me. I need to get with them. Let's reschedule, get this done next day or the day after. And you reschedule it. Now, if you're rescheduling it all the time, you don't have a commitment. If you break the schedule only slightly, not too often, it means you're committed. But we got to be realistic. Sometimes you have to do that. Now, when do you coach? Any employee, get this now, any employee, anytime, all the time, with scheduled formal coaching and day in and day out with informal coaching. Now, I asked managers over the past 10 years, how many interactions with employees, and this is managers who have 5 to 7 employees, how many interactions during a given day do you have with them? And most of them said around 40 times. And that could be, again, by email, text, a chance encounter, brief engagement, in person, virtual, 40 different times. And let's say each of those take a minute and a half, okay? So that's 40 plus another 20, that's 60 minutes in a given day. Okay, wouldn't it be important to make sure that all of those are done positively, that you add some value, you just don't chit-chat about the baseball game or the soccer game or going out to dinner or drinking or something. You really touch on something else besides those things. Doesn't mean you don't ever do some chatter with people, but you can always add something in it in an informal situation, and you do it positively. You're upbeat, you're helpful, you're concerned, you care, you listen. Okay? Critical in informal and formal coaching. And in the scheduled coaching, just keep that going. So you coach all the time. And when we do this, what happens is the employee begins to succeed. They get upbeat. They get some positive momentum. They develop their skills and abilities, because they're not just learning on a training session on your online learning and development site. You're teaching them about the business, about people, while you're coaching them. And then what it does is impact results. See, this is what is the difference between what every other manager tends to do. And by the way, research by Gallup says 82% of managers fail. Okay? So you'll be in good company. 16% of the managers out there, if you can get this coaching process down and make it happen. Now, what are some behaviors to keep in mind as coaching? You lead by example. As I've said a number of times, positive, upbeat, caring, that makes a difference. Integrity, they can count on you. You do what you say you're going to do. You talk the walk, you walk the talk. You ask questions and you listen. Okay? Those two go together. When you ask a question, be prepared to listen immediately. Don't jump in and speak over to the employee. Listen, paraphrase. Question if you don't understand. Then you problem solve, as I described earlier. It's a mutual decision-making process, a win-win, not a win-lose. You give praise and recognition. So when you're in a coaching session, even in informal, you want to look for opportunities to say, good job on such and such. Way to go on X. Way to follow through. You got it done. You saw the problem, you followed up on it, and then you let me know what happened. Excellent. And then you got to follow through. All the time. Don't be the one that always misses the meetings. Don't be the one that forgets. Don't be the one that shows the employees they're not important. Employees are the priority. So you stick to it. As I said earlier, there may be an occasion, but as a general rule, you stick to it like glue and get it done. See, we're always going to be tested as a leader. We want to win. We want to be known as a person that has expertise and knows what they're doing. We got to watch our personal ego, our position, our pocketbook, our power. It's not about that. All that stuff could come, but the main thing is help the team win. And when we do that, amazing things happen. See, people have incredible potential. Cliff Young here was a pig farmer in Australia, and he liked to run. He did a few 10Ks and 10 miles and things like that. And but one day he decided to enter an ultra marathon, and he was going to run 150 miles. It was a race, and so he engaged in it. First one he ever did, that kind of competition, and he won it. And it confounded everybody. He beat all the elite runners. He won. And as they asked him, what happened? What was going on? He says, well, I wasn't too busy that day. I decided to go ahead and enroll and run. He didn't train for months. He just did it. And they said, well, what happened? He says, well, once I started running, I never stopped. You see, in ultra marathons, people usually take breaks. They stop at the end of the day, recuperate. He just kept running the whole time, broke the pattern of what's going on, had a breakthrough thought and idea for everybody, and set a whole new set of standards for what that kind of thing could be. See, our people have incredible potential, and if we invest the time in them, we can get that breakthrough that we're talking about. And I believe this, you will lead and succeed if you become a learner, and that's what we've been doing here today, and I praise you for coming in here today and spending some time with you, and I wish you the best of success.